Hey, welcome back to our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Today, something new. My daughter asked me to build her a Peloton rack. What's a Peloton rack, you say? Well, a Peloton is a fancy exercise bicycle that's connected to the internet, and when you ride it, there's a big television screen there, and they plug you into different spinning classes and rides and groups, and it tracks everything that you do. And she has one of those. And she needs a rack to put her equipment in. So she asked me if I could build her one. So I said, yeah, why not? So what we're going to do is put together a design that I just threw into my head that accommodates what she needs. And then because she's of the generation that thinks that anything that's made of wood should look like it just washed up on the shore after the river flooded, we're going to relic it, we're going to distress it, we're going to age it and make it look like it just washed up along the river, because that's what they like. Here we go. I took the liberty of cutting some 1x6s before I turned the camera on, so you didn't have to watch me at the table saw. But basically what we have, the long ones are 27.5 inches, the short ones are 26, and that gives us this staggered look that she likes. Now underneath and taped to the bench is a full-scale drawing that I did this morning to lay out this project so that we knew what we were doing. So here's going to be our back that you've already seen, and then this distance here will be an open top shelf. We'll have a board across here full length and a board across here full length, and in there she'll roll up and put her yoga mat, which is 24 inches by 6 inches when it's rolled up. So when she puts it in there loose, it should open up and hold itself in there. Here's going to be a compartment for a water bottle. Here's going to be an open compartment for storage. And then I guess the big thing with the Peloton crowd is a place to hang their cycling shoes. And that will go right here. We'll put a couple of little dowels in here and we'll hang the shoes upside down. And then of course this thing will flip up and it'll hang on the wall. So let's get to work. And I have the boards laid out. I clamped a piece of wood to the back of the bench so I could push them up against it. We're going to get ready to join those boards. I've got them alternating growth rings. So for example, the growth ring here goes up, the growth ring here goes down, all the way across. That'll help keep it from twisting as it ages. Now the decision that needs to be made from a design perspective is what do we want to do with these seams. Now if you're building something that was, a piece of furniture or whatever, you would run all these seams through a jointer, and then they would be super tight. You clamp them together, you wouldn't even see them. It would look like a solid panel. But as these are, now these are just some 1x6s that I happen to have up in the attic from an old project. These are not going to ever pull together perfectly, and we don't want that because we want that riverbank look. So what I'm going to do is celebrate these joints, and I'm going to take a plane and just plane a little bevel in each one so we have a gap. It's going to look rustic, and it will eliminate any problems that we might have down the road with trying to match up the seams exactly. So let me show you how I do that. And with the board clamped in the vise of the workbench, I'm just going to take my block plane and put a little bit of a bevel on this one joint. And here's the joint we have now, and I know it's hard for you to see, but we have a nice spacing here between the two boards, but we still have enough flat that we're going to get a good seam and it's not going to come apart. I have a biscuit joiner, and that's how I'm going to choose to help hold this back panel together. A biscuit joiner is just a tool that cuts a groove that you can put these little, I guess they're some kind of a beech wood or something, little biscuits in, and they act like splines and help hold it together. When you mark for a biscuit joint, what you're doing is marking where you want the center of the biscuit cuts to be and what you want for your mark to be straight across, pretty much perpendicular to an edge. If your marks aren't exactly right, if they're not exactly on, there's a little bit of up and down give in the biscuits, but generally if you just take your pencil and you mark across your joint, that'll be good enough. If you're particularly cautious, you can just put a square across and then use that to mark. What I'll do is probably put 3 biscuits in, one in the top third, one in the center, one in the bottom third, and let me get those marked for you. And again, make sure that your boards are nice and straight, they're where you want them. And in this instance, I don't have any problem with having all the biscuit joints across the same plane. It doesn't really matter. This is the biscuit joiner that I use. I've had this for years. It's been great. I haven't had a lick of trouble with it. But basically, when this is up against the wood and you push this forward, you can see the blade comes out and cuts that groove. Of course, this is unplugged. You wouldn't want to stick your finger there if it wasn't. So the idea is to make sure that you keep the boards all oriented the same way. Line up this red mark, I hope you can see it. Line up this red mark with your mark, like so, and then we turn it on and we push it in and it'll cut a groove. Here we go. And there's our groove for our biscuit, which will sit in just like that. And there's the biscuit grooves we cut into the boards. They're full of sawdust. I'm just going to take some compressed air, blow them out. If you don't have compressed air, just use a chip brush or a screwdriver tip or whatever, and just blow that stuff out of there. Now, I had previously numbered all of these, which is a great idea as always. And what I'm going to do is get this one glued up, get the biscuits in it, and then I'm going to clamp it down because this is the one that's got the rock in it. So you want to get glue down inside that biscuit area and then on the flat part of your board. Okay, and then you just take your biscuit, dunk it in the glue, stick it in the groove. Okay, lather, rinse, and repeat. Well, I know that looks like a clamp display at Rockler's, but I wanted to get that as flat as I could, so I've clamped everything down. Now, there wasn't a lot of curve in it at all, other than that one board on the left, but I figured, what the heck, let's see if we can get it as straight as we can. And again, if it's not perfectly straight, as we move forward, we just either sand it or abrade it or just deal with it, because it's gonna have a rustic look to it. We did have more glue squeeze out than I had hoped for. There's 2 schools of thought on how to handle this. You can clean it up now, wipe it up with water, or you can wait till it dries and scrape it off. If you clean it up now with water, you run the risk of sealing the wood in the area with the glue, and then when you go to age it with the chemical we're going to use, it's not going to take. So what I'm going to do is let this dry up for an hour or 2 and then come through and scrape all this glue off that has squeezed out onto the face of our piece, and then we can move forward from there. And while we were waiting for the glue to dry, I took a run to the big box store and picked up some more 1x6s. They're getting expensive, by the way. And we cut these 2 to 32 3/4. That's the width of our rack, and then these to 6 inches. And this is where she'll be able to roll up her yoga mat and stuff that in. When you design something like this, normally if you walk in the room and you see this edge here, you'll want this to be the full width of it. In other words, right now it's in between the boards. I would have wanted to cut it another 1.5 inches and put it on the outside of the boards, and then, you know, shorten these by 1.5 inches. But because we're trying to make this look rustic, I decided to do it this way, so you'll see those exposed edges as you walk in. So the next step is to put this together. There's a pretty good cup to this piece of wood. As a matter of fact, there's a pretty good cup to all the wood I went through at the home center. It's not the highest quality as you would expect, but I can pull it in with a clamp. So what I think I'm going to do, instead of shooting pneumatic nails in here, I'm going to glue this, clamp it really tight, and then run some drywall screws in there to hold it as the glue sets up. So between the screws and the glue, it should take this cup out of this piece of wood so our joints are tight. And you can see that gap right there. That's no good. Now hopefully you can see that there's glue squeezed out all along that joint now that I've put. And then using this drill bit, which has a built-in countersink, and these are 1 5/8 by 6 fine thread drywall screws. And that's going to give us a good joint. And yes, I am going to put a third one. Butt joints and drywall screws. It ain't furniture, but it'll work. So while we're waiting for all the glue to set up, I thought I'd do something constructive. So what I did is I marked out where I want these pieces to go. And I marked the width here, and then of course just split the difference, and using a combination square like this, I struck a line down the center of this so that if I put a screw through there, it's going to go right into the center of the board. Then what I did is I transferred that line to the other side, and from the other side drilled holes that allow me to screw into the center of the board. And then using a stubby screwdriver, which I put someplace, I'll find it in a minute, I'm able to drive these screws in. So what I'm going to do is take these clamps off, glue this up, and get these screws driven in and get this so that these two pieces here are starting to set up. Alright, with all the ancillary work done, the sanding and all that nonsense, we are ready to move forward. One of the ways you can distress wood to make it look like it's been out in the weather is to go with the grain with a wire wheel. And what that will do is remove some of the soft wood and kind of accentuate the longer pieces. Let me show you. And you can see how these ridges are now sticking up. So that's what I'm going to do to the whole piece. apologize, I got a bit ahead of myself. What I did was lay the, I don't know what, the assembly, the box assembly, exactly where I wanted it on the backboard, and I marked it with a pencil, and then I took it off and I used those pencil marks to identify where I wanted to drill. So the drills came, you know, the drill bit came through this side. So then with the piece clamped on, I was able to drill and then countersink and then run the screws in to the assembly and fasten it to the board. I think there's a total of 25 screws, so I decided I did not need to put any glue on there. And the other thing I did while I had the camera off, and I apologize, is I put the dowels on for hanging the shoes. I'll show those to you in a minute. And I just did those at a 10-degree angle, so I'll show you how they look and how I did it. So here they are, and all I did was lay cut a dowel with a 10-degree bevel on the bottom, lay it on here so I had an angle, and then I just eyeballed my drill bit and decided how long I wanted these and glued them in. I think that about takes care of it for the construction. It's time to start to distress this. How you decide or how much you decide to distress your piece is up to you. What I keep in mind is the function of the piece. Like, I don't want anything sharp anywhere or something someone's going to get a splinter with. I've already rounded off all the corners with the sanding, So what I'm going to do is just take a rasp, a couple of places. You can, you know, put a couple of dings here and there. Whatever. And I'll always go back with sandpaper just to make sure nobody gets hurt. So I'm just going to go around like that and bang a few things up and then sand them back down so they're not rough, and then we'll go ahead and start working on changing the color of this. And I mixed up some potassium permanganate, which is an oxidizer, and it goes on purple, very bright purple, but it will rapidly oxidize the wood. So let's put some on and see how we do. But just in case you don't believe me, there's the stir stick already. Now I just mixed that potassium permanganate with water, and you don't have to be neat about putting it on. You want it to have a weathered, aged look. All right, let me continue making the mess here and I'll bring you back. Okay, it's out in the sun drying. Let's see how it goes. It's looks pretty rustic to me. Well, there it is. It looks like it's been hanging in a barn for 100 years, and that's exactly what she wanted it to look like, so good for her. I took some paste wax and mixed about 2 tablespoons of it with some mineral spirits, some boiled linseed oil, and a little bit of polyurethane, and wiped that on, and it dried within, I don't know, probably an hour, and it gave us a nice smooth finish. I rubbed it in with steel wool so everything's nice and soft. So if you are requested to make a Peloton rack, now you know what one is and you know how to do it. Hang on a second. Yeah, cycling shoes. I used to ride quite a bit myself. So from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards, thanks for watching. Take good care and remember, just wood color and some shiny stuff. Just like the sign says. Hope you enjoyed this one. It was a little bit different, but what the heck. We'll see you next video. Bye.